Joining us right now is an author, and I would say a very historic figure in the world of professional wrestling. You can check out her new book, Through the Shattered Glass. It is on Amazon right now. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Jeanie Clarke. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good, and I just want to say thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm and just getting back to England from Charlotte, where I had a great 4 days with the NWA Fan Fest, which was my first time back to the States in 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was just awesome.
Great. You have a brand new book out entitled Through the Shattered Glass. What can you tell us about this project and why you decided to write it now?
Well, the reason I wrote it in the last year or so was because I was very ill for 17 years as an addict, and it was a therapeutic process for me, which I learned to write things down when I was in rehab and carried on writing after I came out of rehab, and I got so much notes on things that have happened in my life that I thought it would make a great book. And I didn't actually expect anybody to read it. I think I wrote it for myself and my children. And then I just thought, if anybody was interested, what happened to me, because I was just gone off the scene, that it could be an inspirational book in a way, because I'm one of the few people that actually have gone through so much with addiction, and I'm here to tell the story. So, yeah, I just thought it was a really cool project to let people know where I'm at, what I'm doing, and make amends with my daughters as well for, been through so much, and I wanted them to know how I came out of the addiction. So that book will sort of be there for years and years, and it was a really true and accurate account of everything that happened in my life, and I'm just really proud of it.
We mentioned Amazon, but for people that are listening right now, is that the best place for them to go to find your book?
Yeah, Amazon.com or Amazon.co.uk. Although, if they would like a signed copy directly from me, they can contact me via Facebook, and I'll be happy to mail one out to them as well.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned that, you wrote a lot about addiction and some of your struggles in this book. As you were starting to go through this writing process, did you kind of find it difficult to go back and revisit the past, or was it therapeutic for you to be able to kind of get all this out in the open?
I think both, because my original draft of the book, I didn't go into some of the struggles that I had that were things that I'd actually never told anybody, not a soul, for all that time. And one of my co-writers was sort of pushing me to be brave. His name is Bradley Craig. He was pushing me to be brave. And my other writer, Neil Cameron, was also very much supportive. And so the original draft didn't include some of the horror of the addiction, but I found it somewhat difficult to open up. But after I actually did open up, I felt like I had some kind of closure. So I definitely think the book has given me closure. So it's something that I'm really grateful to my writers for pushing me to open up on.
Definitely. Now you're very candid about your struggles with drug abuse in this book. Why do you think drugs have played such a major part in professional wrestling and maybe just entertainment in general, that whole culture?
I think with me it started a little bit just being around the industry, because there were, I don't think there are so much nowadays, but at the time of the Portland territory in the world class, it was very easily available. And then WCW, with the schedule, you tend to think, I need a little bit of sleep here, and you just take the odd pill. But then it just kind of snowballed. into a dependency. But maybe not for me, but for the guys, pain pills because they're taking bumps every night, and also the traveling makes you really tired, and then when you go to the gym, you need to wake up a bit. So I think they're very easily to get because there would be a lot of what we call mark doctors that were willing to give out a lot of prescriptions. My major addiction actually started when after I had my children, and I think, as I put in the book, a lot of mine was sort of the way I felt. I was quite lonely, and just certain things that were going on around the time Steve made it really big, and I just became to where I was taking more and more, and my tolerance was growing, and the addiction was now out of control, unmanageable. But I think that the entertainment industry does, that there's a lot of drugs in it because of certain pressures on you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know if you still currently keep up with professional wrestling, if you watch it or not, but as you said, I think that they are taking certain steps in the right direction to kind of help get people out of there. We just saw, unfortunately, Joanie Laurer, China passed away due to what they're saying is a issue with drugs.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's heading in the right way in the professional wrestling and entertainment industry, that there people are out there doing less of these prescription drugs?
I haven't actually kept up with all the show recently, but I do understand the WWE wellness policy is obviously working, because I think if you go back to the 80s, and I'm not sure of this, 80s, 90s, there were a lot more wrestlers that died to drugs than nowadays. I don't think you really hit up, Joanie, yeah, but I don't think it's as bad. I think the wellness policy is working really well.
Now, at what point did you decide that you wanted to get clean, Jeanie? How did you go about doing that?
Well, I was actually becoming onto harder and harder drugs, which is progressive addiction. I mean, the more you take, the more you want, the more you need. You double the doses. And what happened with me is it was Christmas time, which is a time, obviously, I really enjoyed with my daughters, and I was extremely unwell. And I think the day that I hit what they call rock bottom, where you just think, so, I'm dying, I can't go on, was the Christmas day 3 years ago. And I'd lost a lot of weight that year, and I kept getting a reflection of myself in the mirror, and I just looked awful. And I became to where I couldn't do my housework, I couldn't do simple things like shopping, and everything was becoming a struggle. Just living was becoming, my bills wasn't getting paid, and I was isolating, so I knew that Christmas I was ruining almost for my kids, because I couldn't join in and I couldn't have fun because I was so ill. And I actually went in to my daughter's bedroom and I told them, I need help. And they called a rehab. But I think every addict has to hit that point where they know that they can't go on anymore with life. I mean, it's just too difficult. Even taking a shower was difficult. Just walking to the bathroom to take a shower, I got that bad. And I knew that I would end up either in jail, I would end up in a hospital of some kind, or I would die. So I just hit that point where I would do anything to get help. And my daughters, as much as I feel really ashamed what I put them through, I think that was the beginning of the end. And stay called the rehab, and I've actually never taken anything since. So for 3 years I've been clean now.
Well, that is first of all, congratulations on that. That's an amazing feat. Now, now that you've kind of gotten one book done, have you given any thought to maybe writing any more?
I possibly would maybe write another book, but it's a completely different subject, and I'll talk about that another time. But yes, I find writing is something I really enjoy, and it's certain issues that I feel passionate about. That drug addiction, I feel a lot of passion for to talk about, and I think that writing is so therapeutic. It's a way of releasing all the feelings and putting them on paper. Sometimes when you write things down, things don't twirl around your head so much, and you get it down and you can shut the book and say, it's you've moved on from it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, if we could take a step back a little bit too, and how you eventually ended up becoming Lady Blossom. Where did you grow up, and do you remember maybe the first time you actually saw professional wrestling, or got just from watching it?
Yeah, I used to have a friend when I was a teenager her and I would go to a lot of rock concerts together during the 70s with people like Queen and David Bowie, and in the punk rock era in the UK. But we would always get together and go to these concerts, and I would go to her house, and I would see wrestling or hear wrestling on the TV in the UK, where it was extremely popular on a Saturday afternoon. My friend's dad used to be watching it, and he actually got sick and gave my friend and I tickets. I'd never really been a fan of wrestling prior to that. I was only like 19. And the very first show that I went to, I met Chris Adams. So we started dating and basically came into the business by sort of a fluke, just that my friend's dad gave us tickets because he was ill and he couldn't go. And after I met Chris is when I started to travel around the UK. And I remember a lot of the legends are starting out. The Dynamite Kid, Tom Billington, and David Boy Smith were all sort of young and about 19, 20, just starting out. So I got to work with them before they ever became really, ever came to the States. Adrian Street and Mark Rocco and all the Marty Jones and all the people. Actually was in awe of these guys at 19 years old, and I was just happy to be accepted because there weren't a lot of women about then, and I was the only girl on the road, and that's when I started to really enjoy the pro wrestling industry.
Well, you've spent a lot of time in the wrestling industry, not only in the UK, but also as well in the United States. So just from spending time in both of them, what are there any, like for fans that may be only accustomed to one of these types of wrestling, are there big differences between wrestling in the United Kingdom versus the United States?
I think it's actually more of a sport, or was more of a sport in the UK. And they would have rounds like boxing, and in a way you have to really think about it, how difficult that must have been, because it's like they had 3 finishes, because you'd have the first round, the second round, and you'd have 3 different. So I can imagine, it was just more sporty. The interviews and stuff like that, they didn't do those, and the soap opera kind of storylines, they didn't have. It was just like a sport, just not actually like in the US. But I really enjoyed it in the US too. So, but there were the differences, more sporty in the UK.
When you first got introduced to wrestling, did you have any favorites at that time? Any of the wrestlers, or any favorites that stood out?
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of a crush on Mark Rocco. So he was my favorite at the time. But I actually just appreciated, how well these guys wrestled. And when I came over to the US, I was like, the first wrestler I actually met was Hulk Hogan. And the reason I met him was because Chris and I had just got to Los Angeles, and he worked for the LaBelles, and they were filming the Rocky movie at the time we first got to the States. And we got to be a guest of Terry. So, you see in a lot of differences in the size of the guys as well. And, when I was there, it's like at 19, 20 years old, and got to be on the set of the Rocky movie when Hulk was on there. Mm-hmm. You can imagine I was just ecstatic. It was amazing experience. A kid my age just came from England, and it's like, wow, that's the first experience I get. So I was just like in awe of it all. Yeah.
Well, we know that you've gotten to work with a lot of, some people consider the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. What can you tell us about your time with Gentleman Chris Adams?
You moved from the UK to the United States around 1990. And you came to Dallas, Texas, which at that time was a hotbed for professional wrestling. What were some of maybe your most memorable moments at the Sportatorium down there?
The fans would be a huge one, because they were like die-hard fans, and they were so cool. They gave that building so much electricity. That Sportatorium building was like none other. It had a smell to it. It had an atmosphere, and I think the fans there were just so awesome. And I watched this documentary where Kevin Von Erich went back, and they were pulling the building down, and I was like, oh my God, that should be I don't know what you call it, but kept forever as some place that people could go, because it just seems like that place should never have been pulled down. It was a historical kind of building, I mean, if I ever went back to Dallas, that would be somewhere I have to go and see the Sportatorium. But it was amazing, that place. It really was. It was electric in that building. It just had a special atmosphere.
Well, it goes without saying that you've spent a lot of time with some of the amazing talents in professional wrestling. Arguably, you spent your time with the greatest professional wrestler of all time, Steve Austin. When you first saw Steve, you guys were kind of doing an angle together, but what were your initial thoughts on Steve Austin?
I remember Tony Adams was the one who first introduced me to him, and that wasn't the best introduction, but I think, we just like, hi, and he turned around, walked up the stairs actually, and I thought, okay, he's not too happy about having a girl with him. That's my immediate thought. I said to Tony, is he okay, having a valet? And I first thought, perhaps he's not wanting to do an angle. Perhaps he just wants to be on his own. But as we went into Jerry Jarrett's office and Chris was there, and over the course of a few weeks, we'd have some small talk, and we actually became really good friends. For a long time, we were just friends. And we would get along really good. He was really humble, really, polite and humble guy, and really sweet. I mean, I don't know if, he was first coming in. I don't know how the industry getting really famous changes a person, but the first time I met him, he was very, very sweet and humble, very sweet, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're sure you get asked this all the time, but could you maybe tell us the story about how you helped create Stone Cold's name and helped with the Austin 316 phrase?
Obviously, Steve was not happy with the ringmaster, and again, he wasn't happy that Ted DiBiase was with him. because Steve doesn't like people to talk for him. And he didn't get the mic as much. Obviously, he's brilliant on the mic, no taking away that. But he wasn't keen on being with the Hollywood Blondes either. But he got to like it afterwards. But I think he preferred to be on his own. But he didn't like the ringmaster, and he didn't want that gimmick at all. And he came up with his own concept of a character that he would like, which is the plain black trunks, the plain black boots. He wanted to have a bald head now and all of that. And we happened to just see a show on the TV, and that inspired the concept for him from the Iceman, the documentary. And he wanted to be a character kind of like that. He didn't he wasn't able to use the name because Iceman King Parsons had used the name Iceman. So he called up Vince in the office, and he said he wanted a similar sort of character with a temperature kind of based name, similar to something like the Iceman. And the story is, they faxed him all the hokey ones. I'm sure you heard the story, Fang McFast and Ice Dagger, causing a lot of fun in the beginning with him and Brian Pillman, because I would laugh so much at these faxes of all these different names. And but at the same time, he was a bit frustrated because he hadn't found the name he wanted. And because I'm from England, I do drink hot tea, and a habit Steve picked up by hanging out with me. So I would make him tea all the time, and he was sitting on the end of the bed. He was really pensive. He was worrying about what name he could come up with. And I said, stop worrying about it. Just drink your tea before it gets stone cold. And I went, oh, there it is, stone cold. And then he had a big smile on his face, and that's how it happened.
Did you ever think that he would end up getting as popular as he did?
Not as popular as he did, no. Obviously, he was extremely good at what he did. And he was doing well in WCW with his wrestling ability. But he had frustrations in WCW. I think the King of the Ring interview, was not meant to be his match, actually. It was meant to be Hunter's match. But Hunter had some problems, and they put him in the match with Jake the Snake. And the Austin 316, I just whipped your ass, just, whoa, there it goes, after that interview. And he was a heel, but kind of a babyface at the same time. So, and that was when Shawn and Brett were having their issues as well, I think, with, what was going on between Shawn and Brett at the time. And nobody sort of noticed that this guy is like getting really popular. And then, he became phenomenal.
What would you consider maybe some of the proudest moments of your career?
I was lucky enough to go to WCW. Obviously, I got pregnant and had to quit that. But, they had this tournament at the Omni in Atlanta. And I always thought, that was another sort of like the Sportatorium. That was just a really cool building. And we won that championship with a match with Sting. And I actually got to get in the ring to distract Steve. And I came up behind Steve all the time. And then I had Sting got in the ring, and I had to get to run my fingers through his hair. So when we won that match, that was a pretty good highlight there. Just being on the pay-per-views were a big highlight as well for me. So Sting was somebody who was, at the top of the roster at that time. So to work a match with Steve and Sting was awesome for me.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I enjoyed that.
Great.
On a more serious note, for anyone who's listening to this today who may be suffering or going through any of the same things that you were doing, what would you say to somebody that may be going through a hard place right now?
Well, I know as an addict that you're very secretive. Addicts are. They don't really want people to know that they're taking too much. You know, whether it's like if you're meant to take 2 pills, you're doubling it up, and then you're adding this. And most addicts will hide the amount they're taking and become deeper and deeper, and then they get on that wheel like a hamster of a cycle of you can't do anything because you need your pills or you're going to get ill. I think there's a lot of shame and guilt that you feel like you're ashamed of yourself. And I think, therefore, you don't want to let people know because you think that they'll judge you. But I think it's important to talk to somebody and like I did, just come out, and there is support out there. And it's important to get the support, whether you go to rehab or to your GP, or tell somebody you can confide in, but not to suffer in silence and think that you'll get better, because it just gets worse and worse, and it does end up either drugs will kill you or you'll go to jail, and they will win. You won't win, they will win. And sort of before, if you feel like you're sinking and sinking and sinking, is just tell somebody you need help, and just come out and be honest about it, and don't worry, just get better that way. Just get some support.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jeanie, we really appreciate your time today. Where can the fans keep up with you on social media? And do you have anything coming up in the near future where fans maybe get the chance to see you?
Social media, you can find me on Facebook. I'm under Jeanie Clarke or Jeanie Williams. I'm going to be coming back to some conventions. I'm negotiating now, and when I find out where they're at, I'll definitely be posting it on Facebook.
All right, great. Well, we thank you so much for your time, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day, and I'm honored to have been on your show.